Hello, friends. This is RubyKSingh with the Real Estate News School. As you know, we've been covering investor series, right? We covered flipping properties, wholesaling properties, credit issues, all of foreclosures, right? We covered all that, correct? And now we was covering actually property management, yeah. And then in property management, we covered a lot. So if you haven't watched those videos, go back and please watch those videos from the beginning if you are interested in real estate or any real estate investment or property management. Um, so if you go back, you will see and you will learn so much in those videos. And again, guys, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you so much for those wonderful comments. Thank you so much for liking, subscribing, and so many of you guys wrote that how much these videos on this channel are helping you guys. And there's nothing like that out there that is free and you are learning so much, and how you are sharing these videos with your loved ones. You are sharing these videos with your friends who are interested in real estate and want to learn about investments, property management, all of that, right? So again, guys, from bottom of my heart, I really, really, really appreciate you guys. And I also love you guys too. Thank you. Thank you for all that love you guys pour on this channel. I really, really, really appreciate you. Thank you for being with me. Thank you for listening and appreciating these videos I make for you guys. So again, let's get back. As you know, we've been covering the property management and lease options, tenants, um, how to spot a bad apple, so you don't get, they don't take advantage of you, correct? So we covered a lot, and we've been covering some points that it must be in every lease. We've been covering on that. So let's continue from our previous video, right? The points we've been covering. Let's another point you have to keep in mind, guys, is how many adults are living on the property, because some tenants will allow friends or family members, to crash at their place, like your place, right? Because you are the landlord. Having people in and out, or for an they are like underdetermined, amount of time. So if you don't want extra people in and out from your property, or people who you don't know, you haven't screened, right? You need to protect yourself in your lease. You could put yourself and your property at risk if you don't include the clause about other adults living on the property with your tenant. Like, let me give you guys an example. Like, for example, if the lease could state that the tenant must request permission for any other adult to move in, and that person must go through the screening process, right? We talked about screening process in previous video. And if you haven't watched that, how to do, what is screening process, please go back and watch those videos. So you have to have your property maintenance standards. You have to determine your standards, for the property maintenance, and you have to have clearly detailed that in the lease. One obvious piece is that the tenant can't, cause actual damage to your property, or else they will face, penalties, consequences, which should be written in the lease, correct? That's that's what we've been covering all along. Yeah. So, but what? Let me see. Talk about general property maintenance, and what is that? Like your lawn mowing or your basic landscape, if you allow, or if you allow pets, you know, what about cleaning up after them, or what extent will you require these items? What will happen if the tenant doesn't follow through? So if you don't stipulate, the that in your lease, your tenant can essentially get away with not doing what you want them to do, right? So if it's not like we've been talking about, make sure you spell everything in the lease. So if it's not there, it's open to interpretation by a judge, correct? So some specific areas of a property maintenance beside um, property damage, cleanliness, or landscape to stipulate in your lease, right? Like pool cleaning, or if you have pool on the property, or the sprinkler system, right? If you have a sprinkler system on your property, right? So think about who's doing to do the cleaning and maintaining and ensuring the safety of pool. You'll need to protect yourself from the horrific possibility that the neighborhood kid could wander, onto your property, or they can go swim in, and God forbid, and if anything happened to that child, right? So you don't want this to happen for several reasons, but, of course, number one, your own liability, and suddenly you can have a huge lawsuit on your hand because you didn't include this in your lease, guys. So furthermore, if you have a sprinkler system, you need to consider who would hold the responsibility for taking care of it, and then stipulate according to your lease, correct? How about the light bulbs? This might seem, insignificant, but tenant should hold responsibility for maintaining and updating if the light bulbs is burned out, correct? As necessary. So we need to be in the lease, guys, again, right? That's what we've been covering. How about phone or internet? You avoid that potential disputes, regarding phone, regarding internet expectations by clearly stating the term in your lease. If you don't have a landline hookup, right, then say so, to make sure that tenant agrees on that. And be upfront, guys. And this is all throughout we've been covering. Be truthful, guys. Be truthful. If you won't provide internet access, or guaranteeing a high speed internet, then say it. Simple. That's it. Don't hide. Be upfront and clear with them truthfully. right? So how about drain stoppage? If a tenant plugs up, if their toilet plugs up, or are they responsible for addressing any fixing that issue, right? Are you responsible? That include everything in that lease, correct? AC filter. Who's responsible for maintaining the air condition filter, right? Or heating, correct? In the winter, or changing it regularly, but again, put that clear in the lease. Lockout charge. If you don't include like component, in your lease, then you'll be getting the keys for the tenant if they accidentally lock themselves out, right? So allowing yourself to be disrupted at any hour to, let the tenant back inside. Put the, if it's an extra key or extra something, you know, they need, put that in the lease that it's gonna cost whatever cost you want to come up with, correct? So again, another point is homeowner association, your HOA complaints, right? That HOA compliance, it should be written in the lease. You have you need to have clause in place that will protect you in the event of a HOA complaint, correct? Imagine you don't have in place a rock solid lease that properly address this, and your tenant whom you vetted isn't who you thought. The stars, you know, breaking rules, damaging your property, correct? And disrupting your neighbors. The HOA, they can come on you demanding you to fix these issues because it's your property, and nothing in your lease protect you against HOA compliance. Okay. So this mean, okay, it's your problem, not the tenant's, even though the tenant is causing the problem, but legally as a landlord, it is your problem. Your land, your hands are tied because you can force the tenant, and maybe you can't even address or fix the issue yourself, correct? Right? So you could be in over your head with thousands of dollars in fines, in HOA complaints, in neighborhood complaints, right? You could be charged or these fees, all because your lease didn't protect you. Okay? So you have to keep in mind, the code enforcement complaints, right? Because just as, with HOA complaints, right? It applies to the code enforcement complaints that come from the city. Okay? And city will reinforce those complaints, guys. And you can end up with big charges and fees from the city. Another issue you have to keep in mind is pest control, guys. You also need a clause for pest control. You would say, why? Mr. Ruby, we're just a tenant. We're not the landlord. It's a landlord's responsibility. If you don't have that clause, again, let me read that again. If you don't have that clause, you could end up in a situation in which the tenant, they can call you at any time and demand a pest control service. You might end up having might have to, spray with those toxic chemicals over and over again inside or outside of your house. And also that you have to foot the bill too, right? Those pest control bills. Another point you have to keep in mind, guys, is the smoke detector. Okay. You need to include a clause for smoke detector. This can be a huge liability if you don't discuss it, right? Ensure that tenants checks the, smoke detector and is satisfied before they move into your home. If there are any issue, you'll have the opportunity to rectify it before it becomes a bigger problem, guys. Okay. Like, for example, let me give you guys an example. So suppose if the house, God forbid, if the house burns down and the smoke detector, right, weren't inspectable by the tenant that was working properly, you could be, faced with a huge lawsuit for the damage. That if the situation becomes worse, if someone get hurt, okay, from that fire due to outdated or broken smoke detector, it could include without, if you didn't include that in that lease, you could be liable of thousands upon thousands of damage and the legal fees and the lawsuits that needs to be paid out. Okay. Another point you have to keep in mind is, who has the right to access your property? Okay. As a landlord, guys, you have the right to access the property on a reasonable basis for inspections, for repairs, and your lease should reflect that. Again, put that in the lease, guys, and make sure sometime tenant, they are in hurry, they don't read the lease, but you let them go over the lease with them, guys. Be truthful, be upfront, that so that both parties are on the same page, that both parties know, okay, so the other party doesn't get hurt. Okay, guys, be upfront with your lease. What is acceptable and what is not acceptable. So, including a clause that give you regular access to your property, at least, every, that you put that in that clause that at least every 6 months or so that you will go and check up the property and your tenants. Okay, this way you'll be on top of any issue or damages that you can catch early on, and see how well your tenant is taking care of your home, right? So don't simply assume your rights that you must include, but you must include them in your lease. If you don't, what happens? There's a small, like, plumbing leak that's causing like major damage to your house, but you don't have the right to, reasonably access the property because it's not in the lease. The tenant might, they might not let you in. They would have the legal right to do so. So as a result, your investment would be destroyed by the water damage, and you wouldn't be able to get in or fix the property, and you don't know what is going on, in your property. And here you're just relying and trusting them, and they are damaging your property for years and years and years, guys. And you can't recoup that damage. You can't. So in addition to what you put in your lease, be sure to check your local laws about your landlord access. Talk to your attorney when you're coming up with the lease. Talk to your attorney, how these are main points, and how, if those issues comes up, how you can handle those. Some places, guys, they require a landlord to provide tenant with advance notice, like 24 hours before they can access the property. But in emergency situation, like taking care of leak, right, that could be, considered as a exception to enter in the property. Okay, so you have to come up with all the property disclosures. Don't forget to include all the clause for the property disclosures that can protect you, particularly for lead-based paint also. That's another issue. If your property was, okay, you're gonna say, Miss Ruby, what is a lead-based issue, for the paint? Guys, there was a law, clause that if your property was built before 1978, okay, that is, redden gas or mold or mildew, and any major property hazards such as pools or, high balconies, that it has a lead-based paint on it. Okay, so you should have the rights in your lease, in case they abandoned the property. Okay, so it should include the rules about your rights. If, tenant, they just suddenly breaks the lease without any notice, right, and abandon your property. We've been talking about that, right? There are good people and there are bad people, and they don't care. These people don't care who they hurt. It's all about them. And they've been doing that to other people too. And they will be continue doing that. They can't change, right? They pack up, use that, that landlord, and once that is their time is done by using that property, it's done, and they just run. They pack up and run to a new place or previous place or whatever. Yeah. And here you are sitting with all that damage to your property, emotionally, financially, right? So much damage. And you're like, oh my God, what should I do now? How I'm gonna fix all this damage? But yeah, for them, no problem, because they don't care. They suddenly, doesn't matter. Breaking the lease, breaking the contract is nothing to them. They've been doing that. That's that kind of people who they are. They will just pack up and just disappear, leaving you behind all the mess to clean up. Mhm. So if you have the right to go in, and if you reclaim the property and potentially put a claim on the security deposit, or you have the right to dispose of their belongings, right, within the law, and re-rent the property to someone else right away. If that is all in the lease, right, before, and all without with all that damage they cause you. So you will almost, certainly need to include more than just, all the points I mentioned to you, but I mentioned to you, these are like what I know, I use in the lease. So depending upon, on your specific property, on your specific state, your area, wherever it's located, the local law and your specific preferences, right? You have to have those points. You have to talk to your attorney. You have to talk to your lawyer. Come up with the lease according to your state, your law. I mean, your city, your area, according to law, right? Consult, again, please consult with your attorney for, further guidance for drafting the lease according to your need. Okay. So remember, your lease contract is your protection, guys. Okay. So, all right, guys, I think we're gonna continue soon, since we covered all these points in the lease, and we're gonna continue, cover next time, what you should do if tenant doesn't come up, how you can evict them, what are the guidelines according to the laws, right? Um, we will and a guideline according to the Fair House Act. We will cover all that. Okay. Till then, guys, thank you so much. Take care of yourself, and we'll talk soon. Thank you. Bye.